on another of my walks down to the market, and I've not done it in a while. Do you know, I've not been very well. Every time I visit either here, Java, or go back to Jakarta, about 4 days later I'm taken ill. And that lasts a week or two. And last time then it was Ramadan, and although, you know, I often leave early for Ramadan, having been so ill I didn't feel like it. So I'm very pleased to be doing this walk again after so long. Now what I thought I'd talk about today is manifesting. Now you probably know I'm a little bit sniffy about the law of attraction. That's not because I don't believe it works, because I certainly do believe it works, and it's worked for me and it's worked for people I know. But it's a gross oversimplification. It's a sort of an idea that has been stripped down to fit our consumer capitalist society, and indeed our sort of consumer capitalist goldfish brains. So I want to talk about true manifestation and what it means. Now I've said it's a bit more complicated than the law of attraction. Why do I say that? Well, it's because it's actually a part of creation or co-creation. And in order to understand co-creation, we need to get our head round the fact that time is a human construct. So what is creation if there is no time? Because there is no beginning and there is no end. So therefore man has come up with this fantasy of, if you like, God creating the earth in 7 days. But if there's no time, what on earth does that mean? And from my perspective, co-creation is therefore an ongoing thing, something that happens all the time. And why do I say co-creation and not creation? Well, that's because God needs man in order to create. He doesn't create by himself. Now there must be, there's always a chicken and egg with these things. He must have created man, so therefore he must have been able to create without man. But he does use man for co-creation. And that's a very, very important thing, that we are part of the creation process. And we do it through our thoughts. So we co-create through our thoughts. But the reason why co-creation is so important is it implies a unity between the divine masculine and the divine feminine. So it is, if you like, as above, so below. It requires the male and the female in order to create something new. Now, don't get too affixed on the male and the female, because they're not necessarily, these are archetypes, they're not necessarily actual males and actual females. So a male could be a divine feminine and a female could be a divine male. But it is a coming together of the divine feminine and the divine male that creates co-creation, that itself creates or co-creates. Now, of course, that can really only be done in love, and that's why love is so important. And this isn't simply sort of physical love, it's a love of oneself, a love of all of God's creation, And I mean all, you know, including poisonous snakes and rocks for that matter, and a nurturing and appreciation of them, but above all, a love of God. There's a turkey there. I've come across this turkey here before, but I don't see him every time. They're quite rare in Indonesia, so yeah. There's another one there. Yeah. Yeah, you don't often see them. So to co-create, we must be totally relaxed. We mustn't be trying to force any issue. In fact, we have to be accepting of what God, in submission of what God's plan for us is. Because without that, we cannot really be on anything like the same level as God. I mean, we never are, but you know, we can't have an appreciation of the majesty of God and how with his help we will co-create if we're trying to control things and not submitting to him. So for me, it's massively important to feel comfortable in my co-creation, and that's why I find it much easier to do it when I'm up here in the mountains. Now, look, we're all different. We've all got different paths. It's a supreme arrogance to, one, believe that just what works for us works for all, but two, that we have a duty to share this with others. We're still imposing it on others. And that's why I'm so against evangelism. The preaching of whatever it might be is completely against God's plan for us. So for me, I find co-creation in the mountains the best. You might find that it's better, say, at the beach, maybe in a forest. Some people even might find that it's conducive to do it in a city, even in a small apartment that they live in the city, maybe in the car when driving. But for me, it has to be the mountains. When I'm in the mountains, I feel God is all around me. His creation is all around me. You see the birds there. I'm reminded of all that he creates. And I can feel all that he creates around me. And what's more, I can feel their consciousness. And as we're co-creating through consciousness, that's very important. Now, this submission that I talk about goes way beyond the submission that so many people believe it to be. Because what it's really saying is that the only influence on us is God and ourselves. So, you know, we spend our lives blaming other people for this or for that, and never really accepting full responsibility for what goes on with ourselves. So in other words, we have to release all these people, forgive them, love them, in order for us to be able to co-create. So we cannot co-create if we have hatred, if we believe that others are responsible for what has happened to us. I might also mention this water pumping station. Yes, it is a water pumping station, but it turns out that it was built, and then when they found out the cost per head of anybody to use it, it was too expensive. So the upshot is that it's not being used. Now, I don't quite know who did it. I don't know who built it. But this is typical of Indonesia. People having what they think is a good idea, not planning it thoroughly, but also people not being able to give you a reasonable idea of the cost, and there being huge cost escalation, so that what seem like good ideas become uneconomical. Now, I said I'd been ill the last time I was here, and I'm unable to make this journey. And I've had to force myself a bit today because it's the first day I felt well enough to make the journey. And I can only, well, I can do it any day, but I do it every 5 days because that's when the market is, because we have a 5-day week in Java. So I've just felt well enough to do it today. But why is that? Well, I believe that we're victims of black magic. But I've had to learn to forget about that, to forgive and say, hey, if I don't want this to affect me, that's within my own domain. I can change it. So stop blaming others. So when we're feeling ill or facing adversity, we need to recognise that instead of blaming the flu, blaming a magician, blaming a government, blaming another person, we have to accept that the only solution for us is to raise our vibrations. And we can only co-create in a state of high vibration. So that's right, once we feel our vibrations going down, we're unable to co-create. So the first thing we must do is raise our vibrations. And how do we raise our vibrations? Well, we raise our vibrations by avoiding things which are addictive. And there are so many things in our lives that are addictive, including watching me on YouTube. But for me, I've stopped smoking and drinking again. I don't really watch pornography in Indonesia, but avoiding things that there's even a sniff of titillation within. Avoiding impure thoughts. And that way and certainly when we have bad thoughts, understanding them to be fleeting and trying to think of good things. Now here's rather an interesting twist. I say thinking of good things, but this can be linked to the actual act of co-creation itself. So if we think of what it is that we're trying to co-create, we don't do it by its sort of physical aspects, we do it by feeling it. So if you're wanting a new house, imagine what it looks like. Imagine you being there and how you feel actually placed within it. And that will raise your vibrations tremendously. But it also begins the act of co-creation. So yeah, co-creation, because it comes from the consciousness, is as simple as thinking it into being. It can be more positive, can work better if you actually say it into being. But you have to be absolutely precise in your wording, because remember, it's about feelings. So if we use the sort of descriptive words that we would as humans, like, I want a Ferrari, well, that's all wrong, because we have to be in a place of already having it. And secondly, what on earth does a Ferrari mean outside of a human construct? So yeah, we co-create through expressing the feelings we will have. Well, not even will, the feelings we have of already having that which we are seeking to co-create. Now, I know that sounds difficult, but remember, if there is no time, time is a human construct. Why haven't we already got that which we see. So we can express that as a feeling. And we must thank God and whoever else we think is on our side with gratitude that we've already got these things, that they already belong to us. And that's at the core of our co-creation. So yeah, it's not at all about the sort of physical aspects. It's all about the feelings, and the feelings that you've already received this gift. And it should work then. It doesn't always, because God, or whoever you think it is, will act often in your best interest. But also, if we are expressing it in a very human way, like I want a Ferrari, it often doesn't work, and we often don't get exactly what we want. And partially it's because, Ferrari has no meaning, but it might be that the universe doesn't want us to have a Ferrari because it's not in our best interest. And we have to be grateful for that as well. Now let me illustrate that with quite a contemporary illustration. We might think that it's appropriate to ask for $1 million. But of course, rapidly the world is de-dollarising. Are we anticipating a dollar crash? Maybe not. Maybe that's too pessimistic. But I'm sure that we are anticipating a decline in the value of the dollar. So that $1 million may turn out to be worth nothing like we'd originally anticipated. And therefore we're no longer happy with receiving $1 million. Now I've said for me I manifest or co-create best in the mountain. Why is that? Well, I think you can see it here. What could be more uplifting than this view? What could remind us of God's majesty? What could remind us that we are but a small part of this creation? Yes, we have a very important role to play in it. Very important. For without us it couldn't happen. But unless we are humbled by looking at scenes like this, then we cannot effectively co-create. Well, I'm nearly home now, and I turned off the phone because it was running out of battery, to save battery. So unfortunately you've missed the Passar. You didn't see Bar Cinco, nor did you see my friend Passas Reliant, whom I had a good talk to about my problems. I sort of offloaded on him. But the main thing is, I'm absolutely tired out from having walked home, because I'm a bit later and I'm walking home in the heat. And being tired out has cured that monkey brain from reminding me of my problems. So I'm actually now able to truly co-create. And so now at last, that monkey brain has ended. My worries are but nothing. I'm able to love myself, nurture myself, love all of God's creation, nurture all of God's creation, but above all, love God. And with that love, I'm able to co-create, or manifest, as you might want to call it. And maybe you don't believe in miracles. Maybe you don't think that all this can happen. But tomorrow is July. And we still have paddy growing. That in itself is a miracle. And that's the form they take. Not something that incredible, just something unusual. And if we care to spot them, we'll realise